Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch an ogre by the toe. When he hollers, make him pay for his awful wicked ways. Chapter 24. The next morning, Elsbeth woke at dawn to the sound of whippoorwills calling an end to a long night. Again, she'd slept well, and the resulting energy surged through her core. She donned the crimson and gray uniform and buckled up the shoes that somehow fit perfectly, despite the fact that they, like the uniform, had been made years before. As a military leader, she felt it her duty to get herself into the same kind of shape she would expect of her troops. The girl on page 35 of the book was lean and muscular, and Elsbeth was determined to mold herself to that ideal. Stepping out of her tent, she saw no sign of life. She was the first one up, it appeared. Stretching, she thought. Yes, I must do some stretching first. She bent forward with the aim of touching her toes and settled on reaching halfway down her shins. Okay, she thought, enough stretching. She set off down the main path, beginning with a brisk walk and soon breaking into a jog. A familiar sharp ache soon attacked her midsection, but this time she refused to let it stop her. She pushed on until the pain in her legs took her mind completely off her gut. Only when a large blister began to form on the ball of her right foot while on the way back to the camp did she finally give in. She pulled up, leaning forward, her hands upon her knees, her face red and pounding. As her heavy panting slowly eased back into normal breathing, she heard a strange whirring and slapping noise coming from up ahead. Could it be the mating call of the great spiny gleekin, or some type of warning issued by the Jermese strangle rat? Slowly, Elsbeth inched forward toward the source, breathing through her mouth. Slowly, a twig cracked beneath her feet. She stopped abruptly, but the sound up ahead continued. She crept closer toward a small tree. She reached out and took hold of a branch. With one last deep breath, she pulled it aside and saw standing in a clearing, Bo Peep. Though to say she was standing would not be entirely accurate. She was standing, twirling and lunging, all while thrusting, spinning, and swinging her shepherd's pole. Her actions looked to be part ballet, part warfare. The beauty, grace, and violence of the movements kept Elsbeth entranced for a solid 10 minutes, until finally Bo Peep finished the routine and paused to rest. Wow, said Elsbeth. Bo Peep quickly resumed an aggressive stance and pointed the staff in Elsbeth's direction. Oh, she said, and lowered the weapon. Sorry, you startled me. What is that? Asked Elsbeth. What were you doing? It's Shaolin stick fighting, Bo Peep said shyly. She gave a quick, casual twirl of the staff. I took it up after my sheep were stolen. It's very good for mind, body, and spirit. Do you think you could teach the others? Teach them? Stick fighting, said Elsbeth. I think it may be just the thing we need. I don't know, said Bo Peep. If they'd be willing to learn, I'd be willing to try. In the days to follow, Simple Simon was relieved of his weapon-making duties, and everyone worked together to turn 200 tree branches into 200 smooth, polished tools of battle that could both bludgeon the enemy and at the same time yell at him. As the talkative sticks were being issued to all those with opposable thumbs, Gene could not help himself. Well, look at this, he gloated. Once again, it sticks to the rescue. Makes you want to treat us with a little more respect now, doesn't it? Elsbeth made her best effort not to hurl Gene into the woods while handing the troops over to Bo Peep. Okay, listen up, barked Elsbeth. Today we begin learning the ancient art of Shaolin stick fighting. During this time, you are to give Bo Peep your undivided attention. Is that understood? She was met with a yes, ma'am, spoken in concert, and with a surprising level of enthusiasm for a group that had always been so down in the mouth. Perhaps these wet matches were finally beginning to spark. They're all yours, Elsbeth said to Bo Peep, and don't be too nice to them. Sure, said Bo Peep. As she took the troops through the very basics of a highly complicated discipline, Elsbeth ordered that the chessboard be delivered to her tent, where she would spend the next several hours playing against herself. By doing so, she hoped to formulate a strategy by which her underdog forces might have a chance against an army that Georgie had described as well-trained and armed to the teeth. So intense was Elsbeth's concentration on the board that it took Dumpty several tries to get her attention. Excuse me, he said for the third time. May I come in? Huh? Oh, yes, said Elsbeth. Sorry. No worries, said Dumpty, as he pushed his way past the tent flap. In his right hand was a plate, and on it a hot cross bun that had long ago gone cold, and a dollop of what looked like mashed potatoes. I thought you'd like some lunch. Oh, thanks, said Elsbeth. I'm starving. She took the plate in hand and immediately went for the bun, using her molars to break through its staleness. With the middle-aged groan, Dumpty bent his spindly legs and took a seat on the floor next to Elsbeth. So, tell me, how are you holding up? I'm okay, said Elsbeth. A little tired, I guess. I must say you're doing a remarkable job of dealing with all the pressure, said Dumpty. It's a lot to be expected of you, I know. I just want to get it over with as quickly as possible. Speaking of which, how goes the battle? Or should I say the planning of such? I'm glad you asked, Elsbeth. The fatigue left her instantly, and a look of excitement washed across her face as she slid the chessboard aside and picked up a small stick. I believe I may have figured it out. I'm thinking of a two-pronged attack, which is why I plan to divide the troops into two separate divisions, A Company and B Company. Naturally, I will take charge of A Company. I've decided to place Bo Peep in charge of B Company. Excellent choice, said Dumpty. Elsbeth drew a crude diagram of the castle in the dirt with a stick. Not Jean. As Elsbeth's right-hand man, that would be beneath him. It was another stick, whose name is not important. Now, I notice there are archers positioned here. She tapped the stick on the east wall of the castle. One good shot at the wall with a trebuchet should knock them out of the position just long enough to get A Company from the trees to the castle gate. She drew a few cloud-like shapes meant to be treetops and scraped out a line from there to the castle. Once inside, we will seal off the barracks and the stables. This should keep most of the king's men and most of the king's horses and king's men completely out of the game. She scratched another line from the trees to the rear wall of the castle. At the same time, Bo Peep will lead B Company here, using the scaffolding to climb over the west wall, where they will attempt to isolate the king. In chess, we call it a double attack, which might lead to a windmill. One question, said Dumpty. Is a windmill a good thing? Unless it's happening to you, a windmill is a very good thing. Dumpty smiled at Elsbeth. You're enjoying this. Elsbeth thought about that for a moment and had to agree. I like a good fight, she said. That you do, said Dumpty. Just one more question. Yes? Your plans seem like a marvelous one. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, pardon me, but how do you plan on getting through the castle gate? Not sure yet, Elsbeth was forced to admit. I'm hoping that report from Georgie will give us some ideas. I'm not sure what's taking him so long. You haven't seen him by any chance, have you? Dumpty realized that he had not seen Georgie since the previous evening. This became all the more troubling when Farah rushed into the tent, gasping for breath. Elsbeth, she said, her face stiff with worry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's word from Manuel. Immediately, Elsbeth feared the worst, that Cruel's army had entered the forest and would be upon them in half a day's time. Thankfully, her assumption would have proved incorrect when Farah said, No, it's not Cruel, it's something else. Apparently, Manuel has taken a traitor into custody, someone on his way to the castle to give away our position. No, said Elsbeth, reluctant to believe what must certainly be true. Not Georgie. I'll dispatch a security detail to have him brought back right away, said Dumpty. Then he added, You try to do a good thing. Don't blame yourself for this. Of course I blame myself, said Elsbeth. I'm the one who hired him. I'm the one who ignored all the warnings. This is my doing, which is why I would like to go along. I want to look into his eyes when he tries to explain himself. Yes, ma'am, said Dumpty. We'll depart presently. In addition to Elsbeth and Dumpty, the security detail consisted of Maury, Corey, and Rory, 3 lads of imposing stature, and all with a keen dislike of King Cruel, the man responsible for their having to live in a shoe for most of their formative years. Armed with their newly issued Shaolin fighting sticks, the brothers escorted Elsbeth and Dumpty along the trail back to the suburbs. Georgie's betrayal was more than just an embarrassment to Elsbeth. It also dealt a strategic blow to her rebel army. I wondered why he was taking so long with that report, she said. All this time, he was supposed to be writing up information on the enemy. He was really compiling information about us. The enemy to him, said Dumpty. I suppose, said Elsbeth. The problem is, I was counting on that information to give us an edge. I had an idea, said Dumpty. About how we might get that edge. Yes, said Elsbeth. Go on. It occurred to me that the mice have tunneled into the castle once before. What's to stop them from doing it again? I'm sorry, said Elsbeth, but I fail to see how 3 tiny mice could be of much help. Let me ask you this, said Dumpty. What is the one thing that Cruel's army has that ours does not? Real weapons? Okay, what is the other thing that they have that we don't? Elsbeth thought for a moment. Horses? Exactly. If there's one thing I know about horses, besides the fact that they can deliver a rather mean kick to the face, It is that they are curiously frightened of rodents. I can relate to that, Elsbeth. Rodents give me the creeps. But I like your idea. It had been a long time since someone expressed appreciation for one of Dumpty's ideas. Thank you, he said. Before they could see Manuel, they could hear him, loudly chastising his captive for betraying his friends. Speaking back, the prisoner was defiant, indignant, and as Elsbeth and Dumpty would realize when they rounded the final bend, not Georgie. Hours of pleading for release and struggling to break free had left the crooked man both hoarse and near exhaustion, while his equally crooked cat sat upon one of Manuel's broader branches, fast asleep. Ah, said Manuel when he saw Elsbeth and her entourage approaching. I'm glad you're here. Any more lip out of this guy, and I might have poked him in the eye with a twig. When I overheard him talking to his cat about giving up your position to the enemy, I snatched him up right away. Howard, said Dumpty when he got a good look at the crooked man, why would you do this? For the same reason I did before, because she's right, he said, pointing at Elsbeth. You're all a bunch of pathetic losers. Before, said Elsbeth, you mean you're the one who let Cruel into the castle? That's right, said the crooked man, and I'd do it again if I had the chance. Dumpty's jaw grew tight. He stepped forward and peered very close to punching the crooked man in his crooked face. The blood of everyone he's killed is on your hands, he said in a quavering voice. I only helped facilitate what was an eventual certainty, said the crooked man. But why help Cruel? Asked Elsbeth. He ran you over with his carriage and then banished you to the forest. Just a story I concocted, said the crooked man. My affliction is actually the result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, as London Bridge was falling down. Cruel pulled me from the rubble and saved my life. It was then that I vowed to help in any way possible to see him on the throne and to do my best to keep him there. So you've been spying on us for years, said Dumpty. I'm a better spy than you'll ever be, said the crooked man with a wicked cackle. The day before I was attacked, said Dumpty, and he ran his head across the scars on his face. I told you of my plan to spy on Cruel. That was your first mistake. So it's true then. You sold me out. They could have killed me. They should have, said the crooked man. Would have finally put you out of your misery. Elsbeth was both shocked that the traitor had turned out to be the crooked man and relieved to find out it was not Georgie. Still, none of this answered the question of what had become of one of her closest advisors. The mystery would be solved when Elsbeth and the others returned to the new camp to find Georgie waiting impatiently. Aha, he said, upon seeing the crooked man with hands tied being escorted into the clearing. I thought there was something about your accusations. A little too enthusiastic, perhaps. You're a fool, Georgie, clipped the crooked man, and you'll be sorry you sided with these washouts. We'll see who's sorry, said Georgie, as Maury, Rory, and Corey led their crooked prisoner away to a crooked stockade, currently being built especially for him, though when construction began earlier that day, it had been intended for someone else. It's okay, said Georgie. I don't blame you for assuming it was me. Well, said Elsbeth, you did sort of disappear on us. I've been hard at work, he said, while giving the handwritten report over Elsbeth, and I think I may have found a way into the castle. Look at number 4 under the likes column. Elsbeth ran her finger down the page and stopped at number 4, immediately intrigued by what she saw. Yes, I remember that from the feast at the castle, she said. His love of fine cheeses. Interesting. Isn't it? Said Georgie, and we just happen to have a very large wheel of it. But how does this help us? Asked Elsbeth. As I seem to recall, the cheese stands alone. The cheese stands on the side of justice, said the cheese, who had rolled up silently behind Elsbeth. Count me in. Okay, said Elsbeth, both surprised and happy to see the cheese. We'd be very grateful for your help, but are you sure about this? It could be very dangerous. Danger is my middle name, said the cheese. When Elsbeth chuckled at this, the cheese felt it necessary to explain. No, seriously, Danger really is my middle name. First name, Rodney. Your name is Rodney Danger, Cheese? At your service, said the cheese. So, what did Georgie say to change your mind? Asked Elsbeth. It was nothing he said. It was something you did, said the cheese. I heard about how you lost that chess match on purpose. You could have gone home and left this whole lousy mess to someone else, but you stayed. When I heard that, man, let me just say you make me want to be a better cheese, said the cheese, unaware for the moment that he was being licked by a tiny tongue. Couldn't get much better if you ask me. Excuse me, said Barry White, the owner of that tiny tongue. Hey, said Rodney. He spun around quickly and then lurched forward, threatening to flatten the 3 mice. Nobody licks the cheese unless I say so. Sorry, offered Earl Grey. It won't happen again, will it, Barry? No, sir, said Barry, hanging his head, but still smacking his lips. You wanted to see us, General? Said Earl Grey. Yes, said Elspeth. I need you to leave first thing tomorrow morning. But it was just one little lick, Barry protested. On a mission, Elspeth clarified, to the castle. What kind of mission? Said James Brown. One that only you three could pull off. There was a crooked man, and he walked a crooked mile on his way to betray Elsbeth's army rank and file. He and his crooked cat met a willow named Manuel. Now they both live together in a little crooked cell.